Welcome back to another episode of the Bear Trap on the Boom Bust channel, a Bears podcast by a Bears fan. I'm your host Terry, and today doing a recap of our victory against the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's get into it. Look, this was going to, I won't say a major test, but this was supposed to be a test for us. With our injuries and with, I would say almost everything. So with the injuries, with kind of the momentum coming off last week, but also the inconsistencies with the offense and just the matchup advantages we had with the Raiders, this was supposed to be a good test. And, it's one that I felt like, okay, we should be able to show our resilience, but I didn't think it needed to be this tough because and rightfully so, anybody that is looking at this game, we're only talking about one thing. The turnovers you get, the takeaways, whatever. That is the I keep wanting to say the answer to the test. That's not what I'm trying to say. But that's the result that you want. You know what I'm saying? When I say this is a test, let's see our resilience, let's see our ability to execute. That is the result you want. Okay, we got these turnovers, we took advantage. To me, that was not the only, but that was the big question on the test. The question on the test, one of the questions that was not supposed to be on the test was, can the Bears offense turn turnovers into points with everything that we got? Now, again, we had injuries, Loveland was out, which is, whatever. He's more of a redundancy. And then Darnell Wright was out. What we got going against Max Crosby, So that was definitely a big question mark. So I get all that, but still, you would think with Caleb in year 2, with all this talk about Ben Johnson's play calling and his offense, you talk about the huge upgrade, you talk about the weapons we got, the Bears getting points should not have been a question on the test, and yet we made it a question on the test, one that we got wrong, and that was concerning. That was very concerning. I think we stepped up in some ways. For sure, obviously, we won the game, but it's nothing else you can do when you watch this game but circle that. You're talking about 3 turnovers where the Bears started within the 25, and then the last one we started on the opponent's 40. So all of these we started past the 50. So, and I've said before, if you're new, you break the game up into zones when you're talking about managing the game. And once the 50 is neutral, but past the 50, that's kind of when you start talking. Once you get to the 40 past that, that's when you are in the green zone, what I call it. That means we are now making decisions about punting instead of kicking field goal, or vice versa, kicking field goals instead of punting, going forward on 4th. The percentage of scoring is a lot higher. Then you get to the 20, that's the red zone. Then you get to the 10, that's the white zone. So one drive we started literally in the red zone on the 20, the other 2 were the 24. So it's just, you look at it, I think overall we scored 2 field goals and we got a touchdown. So 13 points if you want to be technical, off of 4 turnovers. When 4 touchdowns, that's 28 points. So you see the difference there. And we won by 1. The game should not have been as difficult as it was when the defense overperformed what they were being tested on, and the offense just did not show up. So that was very concerning. Defensively, man, the run defense is, Grady Jarrett was out and all that. And there was moments that was good. And again, the offensive line for the Raiders was just a very mixed bag that honestly has been underperforming for a while. And we had the sneak play, the 4th and 1. Not only do we blow it up, but we caused the turnover. So we saw some good things, but It seems that once we get into, at least this year, once we get against a good zone play, we really get displaced. And that touchdown run with Genty, I think it was number 20. I don't know who that is and what they play, but it was clearly a defensive back. They were way out of their gap and got pinned in, and so was open space to the free safety. And so, yeah, you just got to work on that gap integrity. I mean, the thing is, when you work mostly like the NFL does in nickel personnel, you only have 2 linebackers. Your defensive backs need to understand their run responsibility, especially when you get into zone, because that's when, if done correctly, you have options of where you can go. You over pursue, the running back can make you pay for that. If you don't pursue fast enough, they can make you pay for that. So we were just displaced. We were not where we were supposed to be a lot of times in those types of runs. But, obviously we didn't let it kill us. And then in the pass game, man, it was just a great game plan. Like, it reminds me of the same thing I said. I want to say it was the first game against the Vikings last year, where we really just bottled up Justin Jefferson, and people were trying to hype up, what's his name, Kyler Gordon so bad. I'm like, you could see from the film, like, he is anticipating, not even anticipating, he's going to a spot to take away certain routes. That tells you that he's not reading anything necessarily, but the film study and the game planning was enough that they said, okay, this is how we're going to play these pass concepts. This is what's going to hurt us. We're going to get here and intercept that route before it even gets started and just take it away. And it reminded me of that. Like, it wasn't necessarily just, okay, I'm out here in zone reading the play. It was, okay, they're in this formation. I got to get to this spot. If I get to this spot, Geno's coming here. And that happened over and over again. Then, just some good plays by everybody for sure. But still, man, just really good game planning. Even though Geno started to get us, and again, that lack of pass rush started to show. But overall, I mean, that's the thing with the defense. If you create those turnovers, you bend, don't break. You could allow a touchdown. You could allow a longer drive or two because you took away possessions from the offense and gave our offense an extra possession. So, especially for being as injured as we are, because it's very tough. Like, once you lose a number 1 corner, you now have your number 2 kind of one trick pony corner having to do more than what he's usually asked to do, which then makes him vulnerable. But then you lose your nickel, and your nickel, because the corners of the perimeter, once you lose the nickel, now your safeties, and to an extension, your linebackers have to do more than what they're usually asked to do to compensate for the nickel and what can happen over the seam. And then on top of that, your weak side linebacker is out. And so then that makes even more strain on the safety. So with all that, against an offense that's not super potent, again, you give up some yards, you give up some touchdowns, but you also get a number of turnovers. So that was just great stuff. You can't really ask for much more from a defense that's, that's playing, with a couple arms, one arm tied behind your back and one leg. So there's that. But offensively, man, that's where it starts. The run game is it's so bad. It's so bad. And so I think I've definitely looked at one film session. Maybe we'll definitely look at this week. But I don't even really care how or, what or who. The fact is, structurally for football, you have to have that run threat. And this is the 4th week I've been saying it, but especially with the system that Ben Johnson has been running. Like, this system has been pretty clear, or at least consistent, these last 4 weeks. and you want to do so much under center, you want to do so much 12 personnel, and it just does not work as effectively when you cannot run the ball. Now, I would probably, I said during the game in the community, I would like to see more zone, wide zone preferably, because Swift, he's just not the downhill type of back. He's a shifty guy. He wants to make somebody miss. But also, again, like you saw what happened to us on defense, that's the benefit of zone. Now, zone ain't perfect, but the benefit is you get multiple options. If you get a defense that's not disciplined and they over pursue, or, you know, they don't play it right, or you just catch them in their blitz or whatever, you could have a huge gain. And from what I've seen, especially the previous 3 weeks, we've done a lot of power. We've done a lot with the tight ends, and that's Ben Johnson's MO. Not to say we don't run zone at all, but we run a different, or Detroit has ran a different type of zone. I don't really want to get into all the specifics of that, but then they use their tight ends a lot, you know, just doing more power concepts. And so I want to look at the film to see what we're doing specifically, but still, either way, like I said, I'm not going to harp on what it should look like. It's just, it needs to be more effective and more threatening and consistent, and we just don't have it, and it hurts our drives. I think at one point, and it's a stat that I never even really thought about, which is, you know, silly of me because it's easy enough to track, but the number of negative plays you have. At one point we had like 11 to like their 2 or 3 or something, and it was like we got all these turnovers. We, you know, had all these red zone scoring opportunities. We were up, but, you know, we weren't blowing them out. But if you look at the efficiency difference, now don't get me wrong, turnovers are backbreakers. They're way worse. They're the worst of the worst. But negative plays are up there. You know, if you look at your average third down, and that's something that the Lions prided themselves on. Like, you don't want to be in third and long all the time. You don't want to be in second and long all the time. You want to have positive plays. And it's not even just like a negative 1 yard loss. We got penalties that back us up. We got big losses. And those first or second or third and extra longs, those are drive killers. I forgot. I heard a stat this year. But they were talking about the probability of scoring once you get a holding penalty or something. And I don't know how. I mean, I'm guessing that stat is true, but it was pretty high, or pretty low, I should say. If you get a holding penalty, your chances of scoring go way down. But that goes to the structure of the game, that when you get behind the sticks, only bad things happen, especially when you got a quarterback that's trying to press. So there's that. I think overall, there's no question in my mind, these pass schemes are better and they make way more sense than what we had last year. I'm not going to sit here and say what the play calling is and what is not, but what I will say is, even though things get covered, because we just got a lack of speed. And it's funny because I see that too with current team I'm working with, where what this coach told me, or not me, but this coach said over the offseason at one of the clinics has stuck in my mind when he talks about the team speed deck or whatever he called it. But he basically, like, he times the offense, receivers mostly, and I want to say it's either 5 or 10 yards, and he wants to see what's the average time it takes for the skill positions to get to that, point. And because, every year, obviously, your team's different strength. Well, in high school and college, your different strength level, different speed level. And so based on that team speed deck, he has to change the way they kind of operate the offense. And it's so true. Like, I feel like we saw that last year. I see that this year. Again, I see that with one of the teams I'm working with, where you have these concepts that, sure, they make sense on paper, but on paper they don't move. In real life they got to move, and if they don't move fast enough, then the concepts don't get to where they're supposed to be, and things get messed up. And so I think from the film that I watch, a lot of times things do get covered. It's not all Caleb, but Caleb for sure is still struggling to see stuff. He is still struggling to see things, and at the end of the day, he's one of those robotic players. Like, you just have players who, when you coach them, they're going to go word for word what you say. And there's no coach in the world that can prepare them, especially at quarterback, for every 10 million variations of a scenario. So they're only going to go 1, 2, 3 because you told me go 1, 2, 3. And it's not that you want a player to go off script, but you want them to understand the context and you want them to adapt. And Caleb just has not been good at that. And I don't want to say adapt. Obviously, he freestyles, but I just don't see that he understands these concepts and versus coverage the way you want him to. It's still not there, which I didn't expect it to change over a few weeks. But I'm just saying, I think Caleb is still part of the issue that we kind of see going on. But yeah, that's it for me. So go down comment section. We're going to the bye week. We'll see what happens, see what things we change and clean up. Hopefully we get much more healthy on defense. But go to the comment section, let me know what you think, share it around, get the convo started, thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, stay up and bear down.